Captain Dae-ho Kim stood in the darkness of his ship's bridge, watching the stars through the large window. These were not the stars of his home. Earth's sun was somewhere far behind them, lost in a galaxy that no longer welcomed humans. For 50 years, the warship Indomitable had drifted in the empty space between galaxies, carrying the last 800 humans alive. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines. Red emergency lights cast long shadows across the metal floors. Most of the ship's lights had been turned off long ago to save power. Dae-ho was 68 years old now. He had been 18 when they fled Earth, watching his world burn from space as alien ships turned his home into ash. "Captain," called Lieutenant Bo-Ra Lee from her station. Her voice was tired. Everyone's voice was tired these days. "I'm picking up something strange on the long-range sensors." Dae-ho walked over to her console. The screen showed dots of light moving in patterns, far away, but not as far as they used to stay from civilized space. "What am I looking at?" "Fleet movements," Bo-Ra said. "Kalari Empire ships, hundreds of them. They're gathering near the old human colonies." Commander Tai-Min Park looked up from his weapons console. His hair had gone gray years ago, but his eyes were still sharp. "Why would they need so many ships? We've been gone for 50 years. What's left to fight?" Dae-ho knew the answer, but he didn't want to say it. The aliens were preparing for something big. Maybe they had found other humans hiding somewhere. Maybe they were just making sure no one like humans could ever rise again. "Sir," came another voice. Chief Engineer Yong Soo-han stepped onto the bridge, wiping grease from his hands. His face looked grim. "We need to talk." They moved to the captain's ready room, a small space next to the bridge. The walls were covered with pictures of Earth. Blue oceans, green forests, white clouds. Pictures of a world that no longer existed. "Give me the bad news," Dae-ho said. Yong-soo pulled up, a hologram showing the ship's power systems. Red warning lights blinked all over it. "The reactor is dying. We've pushed it far beyond what it was designed for. I've been fixing it with spare parts and hope for decades, but there's no more hope left." "How long?" Tai-Min asked. 6 months, maybe 8 if we shut down life support to half the ship. Dae-ho closed his eyes. He had known this day would come. The Indomitable was old even when they fled Earth. It had been built to fight wars, not to carry refugees through empty space for half a century. "What do we need to fix it?" he asked. "Refined quantum crystals, industrial fabricators, materials we can only get from civilized space." Yong-soo's voice was heavy. "We need to go back." A soft knock came at the door. Dr. Ji-Hae Choi entered without waiting for permission. As head of the science team, she often brought news that changed everything. "I heard," she said simply, "and I think I have something that might help." She activated her own hologram. It showed alien ship designs, weapon systems, and computer codes. 50 years of studying their technology. We know how their ships work better than they do. We know their weaknesses. "That doesn't solve our power problem," Tai-Min pointed out. "No, but it gives us an advantage they don't expect." Ji-Hae smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "They think we're extinct. They think we were primitive. They're wrong on both counts." Dae-ho looked at the faces around him. These people had lost everything. Their families, their world, their entire species except for the few hundred souls on this ship. But they had gained something, too. They had learned things no human was ever supposed to learn. They had adapted in ways no human was ever supposed to adapt. "We need to vote," he said finally. "This affects everyone." 2 hours later, the entire crew gathered in the main cargo bay. 800 people, the last humans in the universe. Children who had been born in space sat next to grandparents who remembered Earth's soil. Engineers stood with soldiers, scientists, with farmers who grew food in the ship's gardens. Dae-ho explained their situation. The ship was dying. They could drift until the power failed and they all died slowly. Or they could go back to the galaxy that had tried to kill them and take what they needed to survive. "They killed our families," said Marine Captain Sang-Ho Lee. His voice was hard as steel. "They burned our worlds. They hunted us like animals." "That's exactly why we should stay hidden," argued Dr. Hyo-Jin Kim. "We're all that's left if we go back." They'll finish what they started. Young pilot Minho Jong stood up. He had been born on the ship and had never seen a real sky. I want to see the worlds they stole from us. I want to know what they took. The debate went on for hours. Fear fought with anger, hope battled with despair, but in the end, the vote was clear. 737 humans voted to return. 63 voted to stay hidden and die quietly in the dark. Then we go back, Daeho announced. But not as refugees, not as the broken survivors of a dead race. We go back as something they've never seen before. Intelligence Officer Sujin Yoon spoke up from the back. What's that, sir? Daeho looked out at the faces before him. Children and adults, soldiers and civilians, the young and the old. The last humans, but not the weakest humans. 50 years of exile had made them something new. We go back as humans who have learned to survive anything, he said. Humans who know their technology better than they do. Humans who have nothing, left to lose and everything to fight for. Navigator Woo Jin Kim was already plotting courses on his computer. Where do we start, Captain? Daeho thought about the alien fleets Bo-Ra had detected. So many ships, all gathered near the ruins of human space. They were planning something. Maybe it was time to remind them that humans could plan too. We start where they don't expect us, he said. We start small. We learn what they've been doing for 50 years, and then we decide what to do about it. The cargo bay began to empty as people returned to their stations. The ship came alive with new purpose. In the engine room, Yong-Su began planning modifications that would keep them running, long enough to reach civilized space. In the weapons bay, Tae-min started checking systems that hadn't been used in decades. Dr. Ji-hai gathered her research team to review everything they had learned about alien technology. They had spent 50 years as students. Now it was time to become teachers. Daeho returned to the bridge and sat in his captain's chair. Through the window, the stars looked different now. They were no longer the cold lights of exile. They were navigation points on the way home. Bo-Ra, plot a course for the edge of Kalari space. Quiet approach. Long-range sensors only. Yes, sir. Tae-min, I want weapons ready but hidden. If they catch us, I want options. Understood, Captain. The Indomitable turned slowly toward the distant galaxy. Its engines, quiet for so long, began to sing with new power. Inside its metal walls, 800 humans prepared for a journey that would either save them or destroy them. But they were no longer running away. For the first time in 50 years, humanity was going home. And when they arrived, the galaxy would remember why it had been so afraid of them in the first place. The last ship carried the last humans toward a reckoning 50 years in the making. The exile was ending, and the return would be ruthless. Fleet Admiral Vexthar stood before the massive display screen in his command center on Proxima Station. The Kalari military base orbited what humans had once called Proxima Centauri, the closest star to their dead home world. The base was a symbol of Kalari power, built from the metal of destroyed human ships. Vexithar's 4 arms moved nervously as he read the reports. His species had evolved on a world with predictable seasons and gentle weather. They liked order, patterns, things. That made sense. The reports on his desk made no sense at all. Mining station Kepler-7 has gone silent, reported his aide, a younger Kalari named Nexval. That's the 3rd one this month. What do the surveillance drones show? Vexthar asked. That's the problem, sir. The drones are malfunctioning. They send back strange data for a few minutes, then stop working. Vexthar pulled up a star map. Red dots marked the locations where contact had been lost. Mining stations, supply depots, communication relays, all on the outer edge of Kalari space, far from the main shipping routes. Could it be pirates? He wondered aloud. No distress signals, sir. No debris fields. No signs of fighting. The stations are just empty. 3 months earlier, the Indomitable had entered Kalari space like a ghost. Captain Daeho had learned patience during 50 years of hiding. His ship moved slowly, carefully, using the tricks that had kept them alive in the void between galaxies. The modifications engineer Yong-Su had made turned the old warship into something new. Alien technology salvaged from wrecks, combined with human engineering that didn't follow alien rules. The result was a ship that confused sensors and slipped past detection grids like smoke. "Contact," whispered Lieutenant Bowraw from her sensor. "Station. Kalari mining operation, Asteroid Field 77 Alpha." Captain Deho studied the tactical display. 12 mining ships, 40 workers, enough refined materials to keep the Indomitable running for months. But that wasn't why they were here. "Sujin, can you access their computers?" he asked. Intelligence Officer Sujin Yoon smiled grimly. "Already in, sir. These aliens never changed their security codes. Same passwords they used 50 years ago." Her fingers danced over her console. The Kalari had built their computer systems to be logical and efficient. They had never imagined that an enemy might think in ways that weren't logical. Human creativity was like a virus in their clean, ordered networks. "What do you see?" Deho asked. Sujin's face went pale as she read the data. "Mining reports, sir. They're not just digging up metals and crystals. They're mining human colony sites." The bridge went silent. Everyone knew what that meant. When the aliens had destroyed human worlds, they hadn't just killed the people. They had strip-mined the ruins, taking everything of value, including things that should never be taken. "Bodies," Sujin whispered. "They're processing human remains, brain tissue for biocomputers, bone marrow for medical treatments. They've been harvesting our dead for 50 years. Reconnaissance Team Leader, Lieutenant Dong-hyun." Oh checked his equipment one more time. His team of 20 Marines would board the mining station quietly, download everything from their computers, and leave no trace they had been there. "Remember," he told his team through their helmet communicators, "we're ghosts. We were never here." The Indomitable's shuttle bay opened, silently. Small craft, invisible to Kalari sensors, drifted toward the mining station like pieces of space debris. The Marines wore armor that bent light around them, making them harder to see than shadows. Inside the mining station, Kalari workers went about their business, unaware that death walked among them. Dong-hyun's team moved through the corridors, like whispers, placing listening devices and copying computer files. In the main processing center, Dong-hyun found what they had come for. Computers full of data about the systematic looting of human space, names of destroyed colonies, inventories of what had been taken, records of profits made from selling human remains to the highest bidder. One file made his blood freeze, a shipping manifest listing premium neural tissue delivered to research facilities across the galaxy. The source was listed as Human Colony Site Terra 7. Dong-hyun knew that designation. It had been the farming world of New Iowa, where his grandparents had lived. "Package secured," he reported to the ship. "Request immediate extraction." The mining station died 17 minutes later. No explosions, no dramatic battle. The life support systems simply stopped working. The artificial gravity failed. The lights went out. In the vacuum of space, 40 Kalari workers died quickly and quietly. Security cameras recorded nothing. The station's computer logs showed routine maintenance, followed by cascade system failure. An accident, the investigators would conclude. These things happen sometimes in the dangerous business of asteroid mining. The Indomitable was already light years away when the first rescue ships arrived to find empty corridors and silent machines. Dr. Hyojin Kim had studied human psychology. For 30 years, she had helped people deal with the trauma of losing their entire world, but she had never seen anything like what was happening to the crew now. "They're changing," she reported to Captain Deho in his ready room. "The anger is becoming something else, something colder." "Is that bad?" Deho asked. "I don't know. They're not becoming monsters. They're becoming focused, like weapons that have finally found their targets." Deho looked at the reports from their raids. 7 mining stations, 3 supply depots, 2 communication arrays. All hit in the past month, all made to look like accidents or equipment failures. The Kalari were starting to notice, but they didn't know what they were looking for. "Sir," came Sujin's voice over the communication system, "I've cracked the Kalari military network. You need to see this." In the intelligence center, Sujin showed them what she had found. Fleet movements on a massive scale, ships gathering from across Kalari space, all heading toward one destination. "Where are they going?" Taman asked. "Here," Sujin pointed to a star system on the display. The Takari home system. The Kalari are planning another extinction war. Dr. Ji Hai leaned forward. The Takari? I thought they were wiped out centuries ago. That's what everyone thinks. But I'm detecting hidden settlements, concealed bases. They've been hiding, just like we did. Deho studied the tactical information. The Kalari fleet was huge, over 300 warships, more than enough to finish off a species that had been hiding in the shadows for 300 years. Change course, he ordered. Plot a route to Takari space. Sir? Taemin looked confused. That's exactly where the Kalari fleet is going. We'll be flying into the biggest military operation in 50 years. I know. Deho's voice was calm, but his eyes were hard as steel. Set condition yellow throughout the ship. Tell the crew we're going to war. As the Indomitable changed course, heading toward a confrontation that would decide the fate of two species, the crew prepared for battle. Weapons that had been maintained, but never used, were loaded and targeted. Armor that had protected them in exile was polished and checked. In the cargo bays, Marines practiced fighting in zero gravity. In the engine room, Yongsu pushed the reactor beyond safe limits, knowing they would need every bit of power. In the computer center, Sujin wrote viruses that would turn alien technology against itself. The last humans were no longer refugees. They were predators, returning to a galaxy that had forgotten why it should fear them. The Kalari had made a mistake 50 years ago. They had tried to kill humanity, but they had failed to finish the job. Now they would learn the price of that failure. The ghosts in their machines were about to become something much more dangerous. They were about to become the monsters that alien children would fear in the dark. The Indomitable flew toward destiny, carrying 800 humans who had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes the only way to find peace is to win a war so completely that no one ever dares to start another one. The Kalari War fleet stretched across space like a metal constellation. 317 warships, the largest military force assembled in decades, moving toward the hidden Takari settlements with the confidence of predators hunting wounded prey. Admiral Kextron commanded from his flagship, the Domination. His species had conquered 47 worlds and driven 6 species to extinction. The textbooks at Kalari Military Academy taught that overwhelming force was the key to victory. Bring enough ships, enough weapons, enough soldiers, and any enemy would fall. The textbooks had never mentioned humans. Captain Deho studied the enemy fleet from the bridge of the Indomitable. His ship was alone against hundreds, hidden in the shadow of a dead moon. Any sane commander would retreat, but humans had learned not to be sane during 50 years of exile. Their formation is perfect, observed Commander Taemin, watching the tactical display. Textbook deployment. No gaps, no weaknesses. That's their weakness, Deho replied. They're doing exactly what their training tells them to do. Weapons. Officer Minho Jang had spent months preparing for this moment. The Indomitable's weapons had been modified beyond recognition. Alien technology, human engineering, and 50 years of desperate innovation had created something the galaxy had never seen. Kinetic penetrators ready, sir, Minho reported. Relativistic. Velocity achieved. The first attack came without warning. A piece of metal, no bigger than a coin, struck the Kalari destroyer Sword of Victory at 90% of light speed. The ship simply ceased to exist, torn apart by physics that turned mass into energy. What was that? Admiral Kextron demanded from his command center. Unknown, sir. Sensor malfunction. Sword of Victory has disappeared. Before the Admiral could respond, 3 more ships died. Silent explosions in the vacuum of space, visible only as expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The perfect formation began to waver as captains tried to understand an attack that came from nowhere and left no trace. All ships, defensive positions, Kextron ordered. Find that enemy vessel. But the Indomitable was no longer where their sensors expected it to be. Navigator Woo Jin Kim had plotted a course that used gravity wells and magnetic fields to mask their movement. The ship danced between asteroids and space debris, invisible to enemies who thought in straight lines. Cyber warfare specialist Yoon Seo Park began her own attack from the ship's computer center. The Kalari had built their networks to be efficient and logical. They shared information instantly between ships, coordinated their movements through constant communication. "Entering their command network now," Unseo reported. Her fingers moved across keyboards that controlled programs written in languages no alien understood. Their security is a joke. The virus she released was unlike anything alien programmers had ever seen. Instead of destroying systems, it began rewriting them. Navigation computers started giving wrong coordinates. Weapon targeting systems began aiming at friendly ships. Communication arrays started broadcasting random signals that jammed their own networks. "Sir, we're getting multiple system failures," reported Kextron's communications officer. "Ships are reporting navigation errors, weapon malfunctions, sensor ghosts. Impossible. Run full diagnostics on all systems." But the diagnostics lied too. Unseo's virus had learned to hide inside the very programs designed to find it. Like a cancer that disguised itself as healthy tissue, it spread through the fleet's computers undetected. The second wave of kinetic strikes hit 15 minutes later. This time the targets were carefully chosen. Command ships, heavy cruisers, vessels carrying the fleet's best officers. Each strike was perfectly aimed, turning proud warships into expanding clouds of debris. "Return fire!" Kextron screamed. "All ships, fire everything!" Energy beams lanced through space, seeking a target that wasn't there. Missiles spread like deadly flowers, exploding against empty vacuum. The Kalari fleet fired at shadows, while the real enemy moved unseen among them. Marine Captain Sang-Ho Lee watched the battle from the Indomitable's observation deck. His soldiers stood ready for boarding actions that might never come. This wasn't the kind of war they had trained for. This was something new. 37 enemy ships destroyed, reported Lieutenant Bora from her sensor station. "No damage to us. They still don't know where we are." Dr. Jihai monitored the enemy communications from her science station. The Kalari were panicking. Their perfect formation had become a death trap, ships bumping into each other as navigation systems failed. Captains screamed contradictory orders, while their computers fed them false information. "They're breaking formation," she announced. "Some ships are trying to retreat." "Let them go," Daeho decided. "Fear spreads faster than ships." Intelligence Officer Su Jin had been busy during the battle. While the enemy focused on the attacks, she had been stealing their data. Fleet rosters, ship specifications, strategic plans. Everything the Kalari thought was secret. "Sir, I've accessed their target lists," she reported. "The Takari settlements, but also—" Her voice trailed off as she read the data. "Supply bases, research stations, civilian colonies. They're planning to strip mine entire systems, just like they did to us," Taemin said grimly. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the great Kalari fleet was scattered wreckage drifting in space. 112 ships destroyed, 87 damaged beyond repair. The rest fled in panic. The survivors would carry stories of an invisible enemy that killed without mercy and disappeared without trace. Admiral Kextron's flagship limped away with half its systems dead and its crew in shock. The Admiral himself sat in his command chair, staring at reports that made no sense. His fleet had been destroyed by a single ship. According to everything he knew about warfare, it was impossible. "Sir," his surviving aide whispered, "what do we tell the High Command?" Kextron looked at the tactical display showing empty space where his fleet had been. "Tell them. Tell them the humans have returned." But even as he said it, he didn't believe it. Humans were extinct. The archives proved it. Every child in Kalari space learned about the Great Cleansing, the final solution to the human problem. The textbooks said so. The textbooks were wrong. Aboard the Indomitable, the crew celebrated quietly. They had won their first real battle in 50 years, but there was no joy in it, only grim satisfaction at a job well done. "Damage report," Daeho requested. "Minor power fluctuations from overloading the kinetic accelerators." Engineer Yongsu replied. "Nothing we can't fix. The enemy never laid a finger on us." Dr. Hyojin watched the crew's reaction to their victory. The change she had noticed before was complete now. These people were no longer the frightened refugees who had fled Earth. They had become something harder, colder, more dangerous. "Set course for the Takari settlements," Daeho ordered. "Best speed." "Sir?" Wu Jin asked. Are we going to warn them about the Kalari fleet? Deho looked out at the debris field that had once been the enemy's greatest military force. I think the warning has already been sent. Now we need to have a conversation with some old friends we've never met. The Indomitable turned away from the battle site, leaving behind the wreckage of alien arrogance. In the cargo holds, Marines cleaned their weapons and prepared for the next fight. In the computer center, Yun Seo wrote new viruses for enemy systems she hadn't infected yet. In the engine room, Yongsu pushed the reactor harder, knowing they would need every bit of speed for what came next. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's extinction had been greatly exaggerated. The return had begun, and it would be exactly as ruthless as promised. The aliens had spent 50 years believing they were safe. That belief was about to become the most expensive mistake in galactic history. The research station hung in space like a broken toy, its metal shell twisted by weapons fire that had come decades too late to save the people inside. Dr. Ji-Hae Choi floated through the abandoned corridors in her environmental suit, reading, the story written in blast marks and dried blood. Human construction, she reported to Captain Deho through her suit's communicator. But the design is wrong. The materials are different. This isn't one of our colonies. The Indomitable had found the station while investigating Kalari supply routes, hidden in an asteroid field. The facility had been destroyed so thoroughly that even the aliens had forgotten it existed. But Ji-Hae's scientific curiosity had detected energy signatures that suggested someone had been here recently. What do? You mean different? Deho asked from the ship's bridge. Ji-Hae studied the wall panels, taking samples with her portable scanner. The metal has a crystalline structure I've never seen. The computers use quantum processors that are more advanced than anything we built. Someone else was here. Someone who learned from human technology and improved it. In the station's central laboratory, she found what she was looking for. Data cores, hidden behind false walls and protected by encryption that had taken her 3 hours to crack. The information inside changed everything. Captain, her voice was excited now, you need to see this. Back aboard the Indomitable, the senior staff gathered in the main conference room to review Ji-Hae's discovery. The holographic display showed star charts, technical specifications, and historical records that rewrote everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. The Takari, Ji-Hae began, pointing to images of insect-like beings with 4 arms and compound eyes. Officially extinct for 300 years, destroyed by the Galactic Council for territorial aggression and technological destabilization. But they're not extinct, observed Intelligence Officer Su Jin. Not only are they not extinct, they've been watching everything. Look at this. Ji-Hae brought up a timeline showing dozens of species that had been marked for elimination by the Council. The Villani, destroyed for economic disruption. The Korth, eliminated for cultural incompatibility. The hegemony has been systematically removing any species that might challenge their control. Commander Tai Min studied the tactical data. How many species are we talking about? At least 37 that I can confirm. Probably more. Ji-Hae's face was grim. The galaxy's golden age was built on genocide. We weren't the first, and we weren't supposed to be the last. Ship's diplomat Jae-Sung Kim had been quiet during the briefing, but now he spoke up. If the Takari have been hiding for 3 centuries, they must have developed survival techniques we can learn from. Or they might see us as a threat, warned Marine Captain Sang-Ho Lee. From their perspective, we're just another violent species that could expose their hiding places. Captain Deho made the decision that would define humanity's future. We make contact, carefully. If they've survived this long, they might be willing to help others do the same. The first meeting took place in the shadow of a gas giant's rings, far from any shipping lanes or patrol routes. The Takari ship was smaller than the Indomitable, but obviously more advanced. Its hull seemed to bend light around itself, making it hard to look at directly. Jae-Sung took a small shuttle to the neutral meeting point, an abandoned mining platform that had been cleaned out years ago. He wore simple diplomatic robes and carried no weapons except for the truth. The Takari delegate was named Click Wisdom Flows, a name that sounded like breaking glass when translated through the universal communicator. Their species communicated through a combination of sound, chemical signals, and electromagnetic pulses that human technology could barely interpret. Your species is supposed to be extinct, Click Wisdom Flows stated, their compound eyes reflecting Jae-sung's image dozens of times. So is yours, Jae-sung replied calmly. I guess the council's bookkeeping isn't as accurate as they claim. The negotiation lasted 6 hours. Trust came slowly, carefully, like two wounded animals learning to share the same shelter. The Takari had survived by becoming invisible, hiding in places too dangerous or unprofitable for other species to bother with. They had watched the galaxy from the shadows, documenting every atrocity, waiting for someone else to take the first step toward resistance. Why didn't you fight back? Jae-sung asked. We tried once. Lost half our remaining population in a single day. We learned that sometimes the brave thing is to stay hidden and preserve what you can. Click Wisdom Flows paused, their mandibles clicking thoughtfully. But we always hoped someone else would be braver than us. The alliance formed gradually over the following weeks. Takari scouts guided human ships to hidden supply caches. Human. Engineers helped repair Takari equipment that had been jury-rigged for centuries. Both species shared the hard-won knowledge of survival in a galaxy that wanted them dead. Marine Captain Sang-Ho Lee found himself training alongside Takari warriors in the cramped confines of asteroid bases. The insectoid soldiers moved differently than humans, but they understood the same principles: speed, surprise, and absolute commitment to survival. Your people fight like they have nothing to lose, observed Sharp Blade Cuts, a Takari veteran. Because we don't, Sang-Ho replied, checking his rifle's power cell. They took everything from us. Now we take everything from them. Strategic planning. Officer Nari Jung worked with Takari analysts to map the Council's weaknesses. What they found surprised everyone. The galaxy's ruling species had grown soft during centuries of unchallenged power. Their military academies taught tactics from textbooks written generations ago. Their soldiers had never faced an enemy that could adapt faster than their bureaucracy could respond. They're not warriors, Nari reported to the senior staff. They're administrators with weapons. They know how to destroy weaker species, but they've forgotten how to fight equals. Intelligence Officer Soo-jin discovered something even more valuable: the location of other survivors. Hidden bases, concealed colonies, refugee fleets drifting in dead space. Dozens of species that had supposedly been extinct were actually alive, waiting in the shadows for someone to give them hope. The Zephyrians, the Mordain Collective, the Crystal Singers, Soo-jin read from her list. All officially destroyed, all actually hiding somewhere in the galaxy. If we could unite them, we'd have an army, finished Captain Dae-ho. But armies needed more than soldiers. They needed weapons, ships, supply lines, and bases. They needed something the scattered survivors didn't have: a force capable of taking and holding territory against the Council's retaliation. That's where we come in, said Engineer Yong-soo. He had been working with Takari technicians to analyze captured Kalari equipment. They have the numbers, we have the ships. More importantly, we have the willingness to fight openly. Dr. Hyo-jin observed the changes in both crews as they worked together. Humans learned patience from the Takari, while the insectoids began to remember what it felt like to hope for victory instead of just survival. They're becoming something new, she reported to Dae-ho. Not just human or Takari, but something that combines the best of both species. The revelation that changed everything came from an unexpected source. A young Takari engineer named Bright Star Rising had been studying human computer systems when she discovered something hidden in the Indomitable's databases. Your navigation computer has been recording gravitational anomalies for 50 years, she explained to Ji-hai through the translation system. The data shows artificial structures in regions marked as empty space, big structures. Ji-hai pulled up the navigation records on her screen. For 5 decades, the Indomitable's sensors had been automatically mapping everything they encountered. Hidden among routine stellar observations were traces of massive constructions that shouldn't exist. Shipyards, Ji-hai breathed. Hidden. Shipyards bigger than anything the Council operates openly. The implications were staggering. Somewhere in the galaxy, someone was building a fleet in secret. Either the Council had military assets they hadn't revealed, or there was another player in the game entirely. We need to investigate, Dae-ho decided. If it's a Council operation, we need to destroy it. If it's something else, we might not be as alone as we thought, finished Jae-sung. The alliance was growing stronger, but it was also becoming more complex. Humans brought firepower and tactical innovation. Takari provided stealth technology and hidden bases. Together, they were beginning to create something the galaxy hadn't seen in centuries, a resistance movement with the power to fight back. As the Indomitable prepared to investigate the mysterious structures, Captain Deho looked out at the stars with new understanding. The galaxy was bigger than he had imagined, full of secrets and survivors that the Council had tried to erase from history. Humanity's return was no longer just about revenge. It was about liberation, not just for humans, but for every species that had been marked for extinction by tyrants who believed they had the right to decide who lived and who died. The war was about to become something much larger than anyone had planned. High Counselor Threkmar of the Zentari hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 47 years. His kind lived for centuries, and he had spent most of his long life watching the orderly expansion of civilized space. The Galactic Council chamber on Nexus Prime was his temple, and the other 11 species that served under Zentari leadership were his congregation. Now that temple was filling with reports that made no sense. 17 supply convoys have vanished in the past month, reported Defense Minister Kexal, her scaled hands shaking as she read from her datapad. No distress signals, no debris fields, no survivors. They simply disappear. Pirates, Threkmar said dismissively. His 4 eyes remained focused on the holographic display showing Council territory. Increase patrol schedules. Sir, we've tripled the patrols. The pirates are destroying our escort fleets too. The reports kept coming. Communication networks failing across 3 sectors. Computer viruses that turned defense systems against their operators. Military academies found empty, their students and instructors missing without explanation. Most disturbing of all were the messages being broadcast on every frequency. Lists of species the Council had relocated, complete with dates, methods, and body counts. Find the source of these transmissions, Threkmar ordered. We've tried. Sir, the signals seem to come from everywhere and nowhere. Our technicians say it's impossible. But nothing was impossible for humans who had learned to think like ghosts. Captain Deho stood in the Indomitable's communication center, watching psychological operations specialist Young-hee Park coordinate the information war that was tearing the galaxy apart. Her broadcasts weren't just revealing the Council's crimes. They were teaching the galaxy's oppressed populations how to resist. Transmission complete, Young-hee reported. Every inhabited world in Council space now knows the truth about the Corvani extinction of 2089. The Corvani had been a peaceful species of traders and artists. The Council had destroyed them for economic destabilization, which meant they had been too successful at trade for the Zentari's liking. Now, 300 years later, their story was being told across the galaxy. Response from the hegemony worlds? Deho asked. 3 riots, 17 demonstrations, and a general strike on Zentari Prime itself. The populations are learning. They're not citizens. They're livestock, waiting for slaughter. The psychological campaign was working even better than planned. For centuries, the Council had maintained power by convincing subject species that they were part of a great galactic civilization. The truth, that they were resources to be consumed when convenient, was destroying that illusion. Commander Taemin monitored the military situation from his tactical station. The Council was mobilizing every ship they had, but their fleets were being systematically destroyed before they could engage the enemy. Human tactics, refined by 50 years of survival, were proving superior to alien strategies based on textbook formations and predictable responses. Kalari's Second Fleet has been eliminated, he reported. No survivors. Zentari Home Guard is requesting emergency reinforcement, added Lieutenant Bora. They've lost contact with their forward bases. The war had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of massive fleets meeting in open battle, single ships struck without warning and vanished before retaliation was possible. The Indomitable and its growing fleet of allied vessels fought like a pack of wolves, coordinating attacks across dozens of systems simultaneously. Engineer Yong-Su had turned the ship's manufacturing facilities into a weapon factory, using plans provided by the Takari and materials stolen from Council supply convoys. He was building devices that alien militaries had never imagined. kinetic weapons that struck faster than light, computer viruses that rewrote reality, stealth systems that bent space itself. "We're not just fighting a war," he explained to young pilot Minho during a brief rest period. "We're teaching the galaxy that the rules can be changed." The breakthrough came when Intelligence Officer Su-Jin finally cracked the Council's deepest archives. Hidden beneath layers of encryption and bureaucratic nonsense, she found the master plan that had guided galactic policy for 8 centuries. "The Great Cleansing Protocol," she announced to the senior staff. "It's all here. Every species they've destroyed, every world they've sterilized, every population they've enslaved, and the list of who's next." The target list was massive. 43 species currently marked for intervention. Hundreds of worlds scheduled for resource optimization. Billions of beings who had no idea they were living on borrowed time. "We're not fighting for revenge anymore," Captain Deho realized. "We're fighting for the future of intelligent life in this galaxy." The final assault on the Council chambers was planned with mathematical precision. Navigation Officer Wu Jin plotted approach routes that used gravitational anomalies to mask their fleet's movement. Cyber warfare specialist Yoon Seo prepared viruses that would turn Nexus Prime's own defense network against itself. Marine Captain Sang Ho readied assault teams for the most important boarding action in galactic history, but the real weapon was something the Council had never expected: truth. "Broadcasting on all frequencies," Young He announced as the fleet approached Nexus Prime. "Complete records of the Great Cleansing Protocol, transmitted simultaneously to every world in Council space." Across the galaxy, billions of beings learned that their governments had been planning their extinction. The riots that followed made the earlier demonstrations look like peaceful protests. On a dozen worlds, Council governors were dragged from their palaces by mobs who finally understood what relocation really meant. The Council chamber itself was defended by energy shields that could stop antimatter weapons and deflector systems that had never been penetrated. But they had been designed to stop conventional attacks, not the hybrid technology that humans and their allies had developed. "Kinetic penetrators away," reported Min Ho from his weapons station. The projectiles he fired weren't made of metal or energy. They were composed of crystallized space-time matter that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. The shields detected nothing until reality itself began to unravel. Commander Taemin led the assault team through corridors filled with the galaxy's most powerful beings. Centauri counselors, Kalari admirals, hegemony bureaucrats, all the species that had voted for humanity's extinction. They cowered behind their guards, unable to understand how their perfect fortress had been breached. "Attention, Council members," Deho's voice echoed through the chamber's communication system. "You are charged with genocide, crimes against sentience, and conspiracy to commit xenocide. How do you plead?" High Counselor Threkmar stood in the center of the great chamber, his 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of defiance. "You cannot judge us. We are the rightful rulers of this galaxy. We brought order to chaos, civilization to barbarism." "You brought death," Taemin replied simply, and fired. The Council died not in glorious battle, but in the cold calculation they had once used against others. Each member was executed according to the methods they had approved for other species, quick and efficient for some, slow and painful for others, depending on what they had voted for when the time came to decide humanity's fate. But the humans didn't claim the throne. As the Council chambers burned, Captain Deho made an announcement that shocked the galaxy. "The Galactic Council is dissolved. No species will rule over others. No government will decide which races deserve to live. The Age of Empire is over. The destruction was total, but it wasn't random. Every Council archive was copied before being destroyed. Every secret plan was exposed. Every hidden crime was brought to light. The galaxy would remember this day not as conquest, but as liberation." Ships. Historian Mi Young-oh documented everything, ensuring that future generations would understand what had happened and why. The Council had fallen not because they were weak, but because they had forgotten the most important rule of survival: never leave witnesses. As the Indomitable withdrew from the burning capital, leaving behind the ruins of galactic tyranny, Captain Deho looked out at the stars with satisfaction. The galaxy was free, but freedom was just the beginning. "Set course for the outer rim," he ordered. "We have a galaxy to rebuild." The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Humanity had returned and they had kept their promise. The reckoning had been swift, complete, and absolutely ruthless. Now came the harder task, building something better from the ashes of the old order. The last humans had become the first citizens of a new galaxy, and this time they would make sure that no one species could ever again decide the fate of all the others. 1 year after the fall of the Galactic Council, the universe looked different. Trade routes that had been controlled by alien empires now carried ships from dozens of species. Worlds that had lived in fear of relocation were building new cities. Most importantly, the memorial stations hung in space where genocide had once been hidden, broadcasting their eternal message. Never again. Captain Dayho stood in the observation deck of the Indomitable, watching construction ships work on the latest memorial. This one marked the site where the Corvani homeworld had been destroyed 3 centuries ago. The builders were Corvani descendants, survivors who had been hiding in deep space, believing they were the last of their kind. Memorial Station. Corvani 7 is now operational, reported Communications Officer Jin A from the bridge. Broadcasting. Historical records in 47 languages. The memorial stations were more than monuments. Each one was a library, a warning, and a promise. They told the stories of extinct species, documented the crimes of the old council, and transmitted technical specifications for defensive technologies. Any species that found itself facing extinction would have the tools to fight back. "Captain," came Engineer Yongsu's voice over the ship's communication system. "The new quantum reactor is online. We're ready for the next patrol." The Indomitable had been rebuilt several times since returning from exile. Parts of it were still the original human warship, but most had been replaced with hybrid technology that combined the best innovations of dozens of species. It was faster than Centauri scout ships, tougher than Kalari dreadnoughts, and more advanced than anything the old council had ever imagined, but more importantly, it was no longer alone. "Contact from the patrol fleet," announced Lieutenant Bora. "The Takari ship Wisdom's Edge reports all systems clear in Sector 7. The Corvani vessel New Hope has completed supply runs to the refugee settlements. No council remnants detected." The Indomitable was now the flagship of something unprecedented in galactic history. A truly multi-species fleet dedicated to protecting freedom rather than enforcing empire. Ships from 19 different races worked together, sharing technology and tactics that had been developed in hiding during centuries of oppression. Ambassador So-Young Kim joined Dayho in the observation deck. As humanity's first diplomatic representative, she had spent the past year negotiating with survivors, rebels, and former council species who wanted to join the new order. "The Centauri delegation is requesting another meeting," she reported. "They want to discuss reparations for their role in the genocides." "What do you think?" Dayho asked. "I think they're scared. Half their population is demanding trials for war criminals. The other half wants to pretend the council never existed." So-Young smiled grimly. "Fear makes people honest. The new galactic government, if it could be called that, met in a different location every month. There was no capital, no permanent structure, no single species in charge. Representatives gathered on neutral space stations, discussed problems, voted on solutions, and went home. It was messy, chaotic, and utterly human in its approach to democracy. Dr. Ji-Hai Choi had been elected as the first director of technological sharing, a position that didn't exist until the species of the galaxy decided they needed it. Her job was to ensure that no single race could dominate others through superior technology. Every innovation was shared, every discovery was distributed, every advancement became common knowledge. "The hegemony worlds are developing impressive new propulsion systems," she reported during the monthly technology briefing, "based on principles they learned from studying our kinetic weapons. Meanwhile, the Takari have improved their stealth. Technology using quantum physics borrowed from Centauri researchers. It was working. For the first time in galactic history, technological progress was accelerating across all species simultaneously. No one had to reinvent what others had already discovered. No one had to hide their innovations to maintain military advantage. Chief Engineer Yong-Soo ran the largest shipyard in known space, a massive construction facility built in the asteroid field where the council chambers had once stood. Ships of every conceivable design took shape in his fabrication bays, each one incorporating the best ideas from multiple species. "Production report," he announced to the engineering team. 47 new vessels completed this month, 12 exploration ships, 23 patrol craft, 8 heavy transports, and 4 specialized research platforms, all equipped with universal docking systems and multi-species life support. The ships weren't built for any single navy. They belonged to the volunteer patrol service that had replaced the Council's military forces. Captains from dozens of species commanded mixed crews, protecting trade routes and responding to emergencies with unprecedented cooperation. Marine Captain Sang-Ho Lee had become an instructor at the new military academy, teaching combined tactics to soldiers from across the galaxy. His students learned human strategies, Tekari stealth techniques, Corvani defensive formations, and innovations from species that hadn't been able to share their knowledge for centuries. "Remember," he told his latest class of mixed species cadets, "you're not fighting for empire or conquest. You're fighting to protect the weak from the strong, to defend freedom from tyranny. That's what makes you different from the old council. Forces." His students came from everywhere. Former council species learning new ways to think about warfare. Survivor races finally able to stand up and fight openly. Even some descendants of species everyone thought were extinct, emerging from hiding places they had maintained for generations. Dr. Hyo-Jin Kim studied the psychological effects of the New Order from her research station on the memorial world of New Terra. Built on the ruins of a Centauri industrial complex, the planet had been transformed into a center for healing and education. Refugees from destroyed worlds came here to recover from trauma and learn skills for rebuilding their lives. "The survivors are adapting well," she reported in her monthly psychological assessment. "Post-traumatic stress is decreasing as people find purpose in the rebuilding effort. More importantly, we're seeing the emergence of new cultural identities that cross species lines." It was true. Children who grew up on multi-species stations spoke hybrid languages and thought in ways their parents never could. Scientists from different races collaborated so closely that their research papers required new terminology. Artists created works that combined aesthetic traditions from across the galaxy. The Indomitable's mission had evolved with the times. Instead of hunting council remnants, it now responded to emergencies and explored unknown regions. Captain Dae-Ho found himself rescuing stranded traders as often as fighting battles, delivering medical supplies as frequently as delivering justice. "Distress signal from the Vega system," reported Tactical Officer Hae-Won from the bridge. "Freighter experiencing engine failure requesting assistance. Set course for Vega," Dae-Ho ordered. "Best speed." As the ship changed course, he reflected on how much had changed. The crew that had once carried 800 desperate refugees now included beings from 12 different species. The cargo holds that had once been packed with survival supplies now carried relief materials for disaster victims and construction equipment for new colonies. Strategic Planning Officer Nari Jung worked in what had once been a weapons storage bay, now converted into a coordination center for humanitarian missions. Her job was to anticipate problems before they became crises, to identify species that needed help before they had to ask for it. "Long-range sensors are detecting unusual energy signatures in the Andromeda approach vector," she reported during the weekly planning meeting. "Could be a lost generation ship, could be something else entirely." "How long to investigate?" Dae-Ho asked. 3 weeks at current speed. But, Captain, if it is a generation ship, they might have been traveling for centuries. They might not know about the changes here." The galaxy was full of such mysteries now. Ships that had fled the Council centuries ago and were just now returning. Hidden colonies that had lost contact with the outside universe. Automated distress beacons from worlds that had been destroyed so long ago that no one remembered their names. Each discovery added to the growing understanding of how much the Council had hidden, how much history had been erased, how many peoples had been forgotten. The memorial stations grew in number as new stories came to light. Intelligence Officer Su Jin worked with historians from across the galaxy to piece together the true timeline of galactic civilization. What they found was disturbing. The Council's reign had been built on lies from the very beginning. Species that were supposed to be founding members had actually been conquered and absorbed. The golden age of galactic peace had been a carefully maintained illusion. We're finding evidence of at least 3 major technological civilizations that predate the Council by thousands of years, she reported. All of them were systematically erased from the historical record. The work continued. Every day brought new refugees out of hiding, new species emerging from the shadows, new technologies being shared openly instead of hoarded secretly. The galaxy was healing, but it would take generations to undo centuries of oppression. Young pilot Jun-Ho Park, Captain Dae-Ho's chosen successor,